Hey there, friends. Get ready, because I'm about to tell you a super fun story that's gonna grab your attention and keep you hooked. It all started on a sunny Saturday afternoon. The sky was bright blue, not a cloud in sight, and the sun was shining down like it was smiling at me. I was out in my driveway, just chilling and washing my car. My name's Jake, by the way. I'm just a regular guy, nothing fancy about me. I like cars, I like hanging out, and most of all, I love playing my music loud. Really loud. The bass was thumping boom, boom, boom like it was dancing with my heartbeat. The birds were chirping along, tweeting their little songs, and everything felt awesome. It was one of those perfect days where you just want to smile and enjoy life. I had my car parked right there in my driveway. It's a cool car, not brand new or super shiny, but it's mine, and I like keeping it clean. I had a big, soapy sponge in one hand and a bucket of water next to me. Splash, splash, I was scrubbing the hood, watching the bubbles slide down the sides. The music was blasting from my stereo, filling the air with beats that made me tap my foot. I didn't think anything could mess up this perfect moment. The sun was warm, my car was getting sparkly, and I was just having a good time all by myself. But then, across the street, something happened. That's when she showed up. Her name was Karen. Yep, that Karen. You know the type, the lady who acts like she owns the whole neighborhood. She lived in the house right across from mine. It was a big house with a perfect lawn, not a single blade of grass out of place. She was super picky about everything. If you even stepped one toe on her precious grass, she'd give you the meanest glare you've ever seen. It was like her eyes could shoot lasers. She'd stand there, staring, making you feel like you'd done something awful just by existing. Everyone in the neighborhood knew her, and nobody really liked messing with her. She was the queen of complaining. So, there I was, washing my car, minding my own business, when Karen came stomping out of her house. She didn't walk, she stormed. Her arms were crossed tight over her chest, like she was holding in a big ball of mad. Her face was all scrunched up, and her lips were pressed together so hard they looked like a straight line. She was wearing these big sunglasses that made her look even scarier, like a bossy bug ready to yell at someone. I could tell right away she wasn't happy. And guess what? I was pretty sure it was because of me. Or, well, because of my music. See, my stereo was loud. Really loud. The bass was shaking the air, and the songs were bouncing off the houses around us. I didn't think it was a big deal, it was the weekend, and I was just having fun. But Karen? Oh, she thought it was the end of the world. She marched straight across the street, her flip-flops slapping the pavement with every step. Slap, 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 it was like a warning sound. I looked up from my soapy sponge and saw her coming. My first thought was, uh-oh. Here comes trouble. She didn't even wait to get close before she started pointing at me, her finger jabbing the air like she was trying to poke me from far away. I turned my head a little and kept scrubbing my car, pretending I didn't see her. But inside, I was already guessing what she'd say. Probably something about my music being too loud or how I was ruining her perfect day. Karen loved her rules. She had a million of them: rules about how short your grass should be, rules about where you could park, rules about how quiet you had to be. She was like the boss of the street, always telling people what to do. And me? I wasn't really into following her rules. I just wanted to wash my car and listen to my tunes. But here's the thing, she wasn't the only one watching me that day. Nope. There was something else going on, something Karen didn't even know about yet. While I was splashing water on my car and she was stomping toward me, I'd already noticed something weird. Down the street, just a little ways away, there were two police cars parked. They weren't moving, and their lights weren't flashing. They were just sitting there, quiet as can be. I saw them when I went to grab my sponge earlier, but I didn't think much of it at first. Cops show up sometimes, right? Maybe someone lost their cat or something. But now, with Karen charging at me like an angry bull, I started to wonder. Why were those cops there? They weren't coming toward my house. They weren't even looking at me. They were just parked, watching, waiting. It was strange, but I didn't say anything. I just kept washing my car, letting the soap drip down and the music play. Karen didn't see the cops, she was too busy glaring at me. Her sunglasses slid down her nose a little as she got closer, and I could see her eyes burning with that "I'm gonna tell you off" look. So there I was, standing in my driveway, sponge in hand, with my music blasting and Karen ready to start a fight. The birds were still chirping, the sun was still shining, but the air felt different now. It wasn't just a perfect day anymore, it was a day where something big was about to happen. I could feel it, like a little tinkle in my stomach. Was Karen just gonna yell at me and ruin my fun? Or was there something else going on, something way bigger than my loud stereo? I didn't know yet, but I had a sneaky feeling I was about to find out. Let me ask you something real quick, what do you think was gonna happen next? Was I about to get a big lecture from Karen, or was something wilder coming down the road? Stick with me, because this story's just getting started, and trust me, you're not gonna want to miss what happens next. It's gonna be crazy, funny, and maybe even a little surprising. So, grab a snack, sit back, and let's keep going together. Okay, so let's stretch this out and really paint the picture for you. I want you to feel like you're right there with me in the driveway, hearing the music, seeing Karen's mad face, and wondering about those sneaky cops. Back to that sunny afternoon, I was wearing my favorite old t-shirt, the one with a little hole near the bottom from wearing it so much. It was light blue, faded from the sun, and it felt soft against my skin. My shorts were kinda dirty from kneeling by the car earlier, and my flip-flops were wet from splashing water around. I didn't care, though I was comfy, and that's all that mattered. My car was parked right in the middle of the driveway, facing the street. It's a red car, not super bright red, more like a cherry red that looks cool in the sunlight. The hood was open a little because I'd been tinkering with it earlier, just checking the oil like my dad taught me. I'm not a car expert or anything, but I like messing with it sometimes. The stereo was hooked up to some big speakers I'd set up on the ground next to the car. They weren't fancy, just old ones I found in the garage, but they worked great. The music was some pop stuff mixed with a little hip-hop, the kind that makes you want to bob your head and sing along, even if you don't know all the words. I'd been out there for maybe an hour already. I started washing the car because it was looking dusty, and I hate when it's not clean. First, I hosed it down with water swoosh, and watched the dirt run off in little rivers. Then I grabbed my sponge and started scrubbing. The soap smelled nice, like lemons, and it made big, fluffy bubbles that stuck to my hands. I was working on the hood when Karen showed up, but before that, it was just me and the music and the sunshine. I was in my own little world, not bothering anybody, just enjoying my Saturday. The neighborhood was pretty quiet that day, except for my music. It's a small street, with houses all lined up neat and tidy. My house is white with a blue door, and it's got a little porch where I sometimes sit and watch the cars go by. Across from me was Karen's place. Her house was bigger than mine, 2 stories, with fancy shutters on the windows and a mailbox shaped like a little birdhouse. Her lawn was perfect, like I said. She mowed it all the time, and she had these flowers planted in straight rows, all pink and yellow. It looked nice, I guess, but it also looked like she spent way too much time fussing over it. Karen wasn't outside when I started washing my car. I didn't even see her at first. I figured she was inside, maybe watching TV or yelling at someone on the phone. That's what she usually did, complain. She'd call people up and tell them their dog barked too much or their trash cans weren't in the right spot. One time, she even told my buddy Mike he couldn't ride his skateboard on the sidewalk because it made too much noise. She was always finding something to be mad about. That's why we all called her HOA Karen. She wasn't really in charge of the homeowners association, but she acted like she was. So when she came bursting out of her house that day, I wasn't totally surprised. I mean, it's Karen, she gets mad about everything. But I didn't expect her to come at me so fast. Her door flew open, bang, and she was out like a rocket. She didn't even close it behind her, which was weird because she's usually so picky about stuff like that. Her flip-flops were bright green, and they made that loud slapping noise as she crossed the street. Slap, slap, slap. It was like a drum beat all its own, mixing with my music. She had on a white shirt and these stretchy pants that looked too tight, and those big sunglasses were perched on her nose like she was some kind of movie star. I kept washing my car as she got closer, trying to act like I didn't care. The sponge was dripping water down my arm, and I wiped it on my shorts. My music was still going strong, boom, 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 and I could see her mouth moving before I even heard her voice. She was shouting something, but the bass was too loud for me to catch it at first. I figured I'd let her get closer before I turned it down. No point in making it easy for her, right? I grinned a little to myself, thinking about how mad she'd get if I just ignored her. But I didn't ignore her, not really. I was too curious about what she'd do. That's when I remembered those police cars again. I glanced down the street while Karen was still stomping toward me. There they were, two of them, parked side by side. They were black and white, with police written on the sides in big letters. The windows were dark, so I couldn't see inside, but I knew someone was in there. Why else would they just be sitting there? They were maybe 5 houses down, not super close but close enough that I could see them clear as day. Their lights were off, and they weren't making any noise. It was like they were hiding, waiting for something. But what? Karen didn't notice them. She was too busy being mad at me. Her arms were still crossed, and her finger was pointing now, wagging at me like I was a naughty puppy. She was almost to my driveway, just a few steps away, and I could finally hear her over the music. "You," she yelled. "You and that awful noise." Her voice was sharp, like a teacher scolding a kid in class. I stopped scrubbing for a second and looked up at her, raising my eyebrows like, "Who, me?" She didn't like that. Her face got even redder, and she took another step closer. I leaned against my car, sponge still in my hand, and just watched her. The music kept playing, the birds kept chirping, and the sun kept shining. But something felt off now. Karen was about to start a war over my stereo, that much was clear. She thought she was in charge, like always. She thought she could yell at me and make me turn it off, just because she said so. But what she didn't know, what she couldn't see, was that I wasn't the only one paying attention that day. Those cops down the street were there for a reason, and I had a funny feeling it wasn't about my music. So, what do you think, friends? Was I about to get a big, loud telling off from Karen? Was she gonna stand there and scream until I turned my stereo off? Or was something way bigger about to happen, something that would flip this whole day upside down? I'm not gonna tell you yet, because that'd ruin the fun. You've gotta stick around to find out what went down. Trust me, it's worth it. This story's got twists, laughs, and a big surprise that even Karen didn't see coming. So, what's your guess? Drop it in the comments, and let's see who's right. Here we go on to the next part. Okay, friends, let's dive back into the story. Things were about to get crazy in my driveway. Karen, the super grumpy lady from across the street, was coming at me like a storm cloud ready to burst. She marched right up to me, her flip-flops slapping the ground loud and fast. Slap, slap, slap. It was like a warning bell ringing. Her face was redder than a big, ripe tomato you'd see at the grocery store. She looked so mad, I thought steam might pop out of her ears. Her arms were still crossed tight, and her big sunglasses made her look like a bossy teacher who's about to give you extra homework. "Turn that noise off," she barked at me. Her voice was sharp and loud, like a dog yapping at a mailman. "This is a peaceful neighborhood, not a dance club." She pointed at my car stereo, where the music was still playing. The bass was thumping boom, 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 but it wasn't as loud as before. See, I'd been washing my car and having fun, but I didn't want to make her too mad. So when she started yelling, I just smiled at her, nice and easy, and turned the music down a little bit. Not all the way off, just down a notch. I figured that'd be enough to calm her down. I didn't want to poke the bear too much, you know. Karen was like a big, growly bear when she got upset, and I wasn't in the mood for a fight. But oh no, that wasn't enough for Karen. Not even close. My little smile and the tiny turn down of the music just made her madder. Her face got even redder, if that was possible, and her eyes got all squinted behind those sunglasses. She uncrossed her arms real fast, like she was ready to do something big. Then she whipped out her phone from her pocket. It was one of those fancy phones with a sparkly case, and she held it up like it was a weapon. "I'm calling 911, she snapped at me, her voice all high and angry. "You'll learn to respect the rules around here." She started poking at the screen with her finger, jabbing it hard like she was trying to smash the numbers in. I just stood there, leaning against my car. The hood was still wet and soapy from washing it, and I could feel the cool metal under my arm. My sponge was dripping water onto the driveway, drip, 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 and my flip-flops were squishy from splashing around earlier. I looked at Karen, with her red face and her phone, and I tried so hard not to laugh. I mean, really. Calling 911 because my music was loud? It was funny to me, but I kept my face straight. I didn't want her to see me giggling. She was so serious, acting like I'd broken some giant rule that ruined her whole day. But inside, I was cracking up. This was wild. Karen kept talking into her phone, holding it up to her ear. Yes, hello, she said, loud enough for me to hear. I need the police right now. She glared at me while she talked, like she was trying to scare me with her mean eyes. There's a boy out here blasting music, and it's way too loud. He won't turn it off. I could hear her voice getting faster and angrier with every word. She paced back and forth in my driveway, her flip-flops slapping harder now. Slap, slap, slap. She thought she was in charge, like she was the queen of the neighborhood and I was just some pesky kid she could boss around. She thought she had the upper hand, like she was winning this little battle. But here's the thing, friends, I wasn't worried. Not one bit. Karen thought she was so smart, calling the cops on me like that. She thought I'd get scared and beg her to stop. But I had a secret, well, not really a secret, just something I'd noticed that she hadn't. While she was yelling and dialing, I'd already seen something she didn't know about. Down the street, just a little ways away, there were 2 police cars parked. Yep, 2 of them. They were sitting there, quiet as can be, with their lights turned off. No sirens, no flashing blue and red, just still and waiting, like they were hiding. I'd spotted those cars earlier when I was washing my car. They were parked about 5 houses down, right near the big oak tree that's always dropping acorns on the sidewalk. They were black and white, with police written on the sides in big, bold letters. I could see them clear as day from my driveway, but Karen? She didn't even look that way. She was too busy being mad at me to notice anything else. The cars weren't moving, and no one had gotten out of them yet. They were just sitting there, like they were waiting for the perfect moment to do something. But what were they doing there? I didn't know yet, and neither did Karen. Oh, but you'll see soon enough, it's gonna be good. I kept leaning against my car, watching Karen pace around. My music was still playing, just softer now. The bass was more like a little tap tap, tap, tap instead of the big booms from before. The birds were chirping up in the trees, and the sun was still shining bright, making the wet spots on my car sparkle. Karen's voice was loud in my ears as she talked to the 911 lady. Yes, it's an emergency, she said. He's disturbing the peace. I can't even hear myself think. She waved her free hand around, pointing at me again like I was the worst kid in the world. I just shrugged my shoulders a little, acting like I didn't care. But inside, I was starting to wonder what was gonna happen when those cops got involved. See, Karen thought she was so clever. She thought calling the police would make me shut off my stereo and say, "Oh no, I'm sorry, Karen." She thought she'd win, and I'd lose, and she'd go back to her perfect house all happy. But I wasn't scared of her phone call. Why? Because those police cars were already there. They didn't need to come racing down the street with sirens blaring, they were right there, just waiting. And I had a funny feeling they weren't there for me. My music wasn't that big of a deal, right? I mean, it was loud, but it's not like I was breaking windows or anything. So why were they parked so close, so quiet? It didn't add up unless they were there for something else. Or someone else. Karen kept talking on her phone, her voice getting louder and louder. "Hurry up," she said. "I need someone here now." She turned her back to me for a second, pacing toward the edge of my driveway. Her flip-flops were leaving little wet marks on the concrete from stomping so hard. I crossed my arms and tilted my head, watching her. She didn't know it yet, but she was about to get a big surprise. Those cops weren't far away, they were close enough that I could see the shine on their bumpers. And they weren't moving yet, but I had a hunch they wouldn't stay still for long. Something was brewing, something bigger than my music or Karen's complaining. I started thinking about Karen and how she always acted so bossy. She'd been like this ever since I moved here. One time, she yelled at my friend Timmy for riding his bike too fast. Another time, she told Mrs. Johnson her dog's barking was unacceptable. She was always finding something to fuss about, like she wanted everything to be perfect and quiet all the time. But lately, I'd heard some whispers from the neighbors. They said Karen wasn't as perfect as she acted. Someone said they saw strange cars at her house late at night. Another person said she'd been arguing with some guy in a suit a few days ago. I didn't know if it was true, but it made me curious. Was Karen hiding something? And were those cops part of it? Back in the driveway, Karen was still on her phone, but she turned around to glare at me again. "You think this is funny?" she snapped, holding the phone away from her ear for a second. "You won't be laughing when the police get here." I just smiled bigger, not saying a word. I didn't need to. She thought she was winning, but I could feel the tension building like when you're waiting for a balloon to pop. The air felt heavy, even with the sun shining and the birds singing. My car was still wet, my stereo was still playing, and Karen was still yelling. But those police cars? They were the real mystery. They were so close, so quiet, just sitting there like they were ready to pounce. I glanced down the street again, quick and sneaky so Karen wouldn't notice. The cars hadn't moved an inch. The windows were dark, so I couldn't see who was inside, but I knew someone was there. Why else would they park like that, all sneaky and still? My heart started beating a little faster, not because I was scared, but because I was excited. Something big was coming, I could tell. Karen thought she had the upper hand with her 911 call, but I had a feeling she was about to find out she wasn't as smart as she thought. What were those cops doing there? Were they really gonna care about my music, or was there a whole other reason they were hanging around? Karen hung up her phone with a big, dramatic huff. "They're on their way," she said, pointing at me like she'd just won a prize. "You're in big trouble now, Jake." She crossed her arms again, standing there in my driveway like she owned it. Her face was still red, her sunglasses were slipping down her nose, and her flip-flops were planted firm on the ground. She looked so sure of herself, so proud, like she'd just solved all her problems by calling the cops on me. I didn't say anything back. I just leaned against my car, letting the soap drip off my sponge, and waited. I didn't have to wait long, though things were about to get wild, and Karen had no idea what was coming her way. So, friends, what do you think was gonna happen next? Was Karen right? Were the cops gonna show up and tell me off? Or was there something else going on, something that would turn this whole day upside down? I'm not telling you yet, because that's the fun part. You've gotta keep listening. The tension was building, the conflict was hot, and Karen thought she was the boss. But those police cars were the real clue, and they were about to change everything. Stick with me, because this story's got more surprises up its sleeve, and you're gonna love what happens next. What's your guess? Let me know, and let's find out together. Alright, friends, let's keep this story rolling. Things were heating up in my driveway, and I was right in the middle of it all. Karen was still going nuts, yelling into her phone like it was the most important call she'd ever made. She was pacing back and forth, her flip-flop slapping the ground, slap, 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 while her voice got louder and louder. "Yes, officer," she said, holding the phone tight to her ear. "There's a disturbance. Loud music, total disrespect." She sounded so mad, like I'd done something awful just by playing my tunes. Every few seconds, she'd stop pacing and shoot me a smug look, a big, sneaky grin that said, "I've got you now, Jake." She thought she'd already won, like calling the cops was her big victory. But me? I kept my cool. I didn't yell back or get mad. I just stood there by my car, leaning against the wet hood with my arms crossed. My sponge was still in my hand, dripping little drops of soapy water onto the driveway, drip, drip, drip. The music was playing soft now, just a quiet hum from my stereo. I smiled a little, not because I was scared, but because I knew something Karen didn't. While she was busy ranting, I'd noticed something big. Those two police cars I told you about? The ones parked down the street? Well, they weren't just sitting there anymore. The cops were stepping out of them, slow and steady, like they had all the time in the world. I saw them out of the corner of my eye. Two officers, one tall with a hat, and one shorter with sunglasses, climbed out of the cars and shut the doors real quiet. Click, click. No sirens, no lights, just silence. They started walking toward us, their shoes tapping the pavement, soft and slow, tap, tap, tap. They weren't in a hurry, but they were coming closer, step by step. I could see them clear as day, but Karen? She didn't have a clue. She was too busy yelling into her phone, waving her free hand around like she was swatting flies. "He's ruining the neighborhood," she shouted. "It's awful. You need to come quick." Her voice was so loud, I bet the whole street could hear her complaining. I didn't say a word. I just stayed quiet, pretending like nothing was happening. I picked up my sponge again and started polishing my car, rubbing the hood in little circles. The soap made it shiny, and the sun bounced off the wet spots, making them sparkle. I acted like Karen wasn't even there, like her yelling was just background noise. But inside, my heart was beating a little faster, not because I was nervous, but because I was excited. Those cops were getting closer, and I had a feeling this wasn't about my music anymore. Karen thought she was the boss, but something bigger was going on, and she didn't even see it coming. Let's talk about Karen for a second. She was still pacing in my driveway, her flip-flops making that slap-slap sound. Her face was red, her sunglasses were slipping down her nose, and her hair was getting messy from all her waving and shouting. She looked like a cartoon character who's about to explode, super mad and super sure of herself. "Yes, officer," she said again. "It's an emergency." He won't listen. She kept glaring at me, her eyes all squinted, like she thought I'd shrink under her mean stare. But I didn't. I just kept polishing my car, letting the sponge slide over the hood, squeak, acting like I didn't care one bit. Meanwhile, the cops were almost here. They'd walked past the big oak tree now, the one 5 houses down. I could see them better. The tall one had a serious face, and the short one was holding something in his hand, maybe a notebook or a radio. They were close enough that I could hear their shoes on the sidewalk tap, 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 getting louder with every step. They weren't running or shouting, just walking calm and steady, like they knew exactly what they were doing. I glanced at them quick, then looked back at my car, pretending I was busy. I didn't want Karen to notice yet. I wanted her to keep thinking she was winning, because the surprise was gonna be so much better that way. Karen didn't see the cops at all. She was too caught up in her phone call, too busy telling the 911 lady how terrible I was. "He's blasting music," she said. "It's shaking my windows. I can't take it." She stomped her foot hard thump, and turned her back to me for a second, pacing toward the edge of my driveway. Her voice was so loud, it drowned out the birds chirping in the trees. She thought the police were far away, speeding over with sirens just for her. She had no idea they were already here, sneaking up behind her like quiet shadows. It was almost funny, watching her act so big and tough when she didn't even know what was happening. I kept my cool, though. I didn't laugh or point or say anything. I just rubbed my sponge on the car, making little bubbles pop pop, pop, pop. The music was still humming, soft and low, and the sun was still shining bright. My flip-flops were wet, my shorts were damp, and my t-shirt stuck to my back a little from the heat. Everything looked normal on the outside, but inside, I was buzzing. Why? Because I'd heard some stuff about Karen lately, stuff that made me think she wasn't as perfect as she acted. And with those cops getting closer, I started to wonder if it was all connected. See, the neighbors had been whispering about Karen for a while. Not loud whispers, just little bits of talk I'd picked up here and there. One day, my friend Timmy said he saw a weird car parked at her house super late, like midnight. It was a black car with dark windows, and it stayed for hours before driving off fast. Timmy thought it was spooky, like something from a movie. Then Mrs. Johnson, the nice lady with the yappy dog, told me she heard Karen arguing with some guy in a suit a few days ago. She said Karen was yelling about money, something about paying up and keeping quiet. Mrs. Johnson didn't know what it meant, but it stuck in my head. Was Karen up to no good? I didn't know for sure. It was just gossip, little stories people passed around. But standing there in my driveway, with Karen ranting and the cops closing in, it started to feel real. What if Karen was hiding something? What if she'd been doing shady stuff like secret deals or sneaky plans and someone found out? I'd always thought she was just a bossy lady who liked rules, but maybe there was more to her. Maybe those late-night visitors and that guy in the suit meant trouble. And maybe, just maybe, those cops weren't here for my music at all. Maybe they were here for her. The cops were super close now, maybe 3 houses away. I could see their uniforms clear as day, dark blue with shiny badges on their chests. The tall one had his hat pulled low, and the short one was talking into his radio, real quiet so I couldn't hear. They were walking side by side, Their steps matching tap, tap, tap like they were in no rush but knew where they were going. Karen still didn't see them. She was facing me again, her phone pressed to her ear, her free hand pointing at me like a sword. "He's still playing it," she shouted. "He doesn't care. Hurry up." She thought she was so smart, like the cops would swoop in and save her from my awful music. I kept polishing my car, moving my sponge slow and steady. The hood was almost clean now, all shiny and red under the sun. I peeked at the cops again. They were just 2 houses away. Their faces were serious, like they weren't here to mess around. My heart did a little jump, not a scared jump, but a "this is gonna be good" jump. Karen's smug look was still plastered on her face, and she kept pacing, her flip-flop slapping louder, slap, slap, slap. She didn't know it yet, but her big win was about to turn into a big oops. Those cops weren't speeding over from far away, they were right here, and they were coming straight for us. I started thinking more about those whispers. What if Karen really was in trouble? What if she'd been doing something sneaky, like taking money she shouldn't or making deals with shady people? She always acted so perfect. Her lawn was perfect, her house was perfect, her rules were perfect, but maybe it was all a trick. Maybe she was pretending to be the bossy queen of the neighborhood to hide something bad. I didn't have proof, just little hints from what people said. But with those cops walking closer, it felt like the puzzle pieces were starting to fit together. The cops were 1 house away now. I could hear their radios crackling a little, bzz, bzz, like they were talking to someone far off. Karen was still on her phone, but her voice was slowing down. "Yes, yes," she said. "It's the house with the red car. Hurry." She hung up with a big huff and turned to me, crossing her arms again. "They're coming," she said, her voice all sharp and proud. "You're done, Jake." She stood there, staring at me with that smug grin, like she'd just won a gold medal. I just shrugged and kept polishing, letting the sponge squeak against the car. I didn't need to say anything. Those cops were about to do the talking for me. They were here now, right at the edge of my driveway. Their shoes stopped tapping, and they stood still for a second, looking around. Karen didn't see them yet. She had her back to the street, facing me with her hands on her hips. The tall cop adjusted his hat, and the short one put his radio back on his belt. They were so close, I could see the buttons on their shirts shining in the sun. My music was still humming, the birds were still chirping, and the air felt thick, like something huge was about to happen. Was Karen about to get caught? Was all that neighbor gossip true? I didn't know yet, but I had a feeling I was about to find out. All right, friends, here we go. This is the big moment you've been waiting for. Things were getting wild in my driveway, and it was about to explode into the craziest twist ever. The cops were super close now, right at the edge of my driveway. Their shoes had stopped tapping on the sidewalk, and they were standing there, looking serious. I was still leaning against my car, my sponge dripping soapy water, drip, 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 while my music hummed soft and low from the stereo. Karen was in the middle of her big rant, yelling into her phone like she was the boss of everything. But then, something amazing happened. She finally noticed the cops. Her voice was loud, barking at the 911 lady. "Yes, he's still playing that awful music," she started, but then she stopped. Mid-sentence, right in the middle of a word, her mouth froze open. Her jaw dropped so low, it looked like it might fall off her face. Her big sunglasses slid down her nose a little, and her eyes got wide, like 2 big marbles popping out. Her phone slipped in her hand just a tiny bit, but enough that she had to grab it quick before it fell. She turned her head slow, like she couldn't believe what she was seeing. There they were, 2 cops, standing right behind her, calm and quiet, with their badges shining in the sun. Karen blinked fast, like she thought she was dreaming. Her red face went pale for a second, then red again, like she didn't know what to feel. The tall cop, the one with the hat, stepped forward, walking right past me like I wasn't even there. He didn't look at me, didn't say hi, didn't care about my music or my car. His eyes were locked on Karen, like a laser beam zeroing in. "Ma'am," he said, his voice deep and steady. "Are you Karen Thompson?" He stood tall, his hat making him look even bigger, and his hands rested on his belt, where his radio was clipped. Karen blinked again, her mouth still hanging open. "Why yes," she said, her voice all shaky now. "Why?" She sounded confused, like she had no idea what was happening. Her flip-flops shifted on the driveway scrape as she turned to face the cop. Her phone was still in her hand, but she wasn't yelling into it anymore. The smug look she'd had, the one that said, "I've won, Jake," was gone. Now she looked lost, like a kid who forgot her lines in a school play. She stared at the cop, then at me, then back at the cop, her head whipping around fast. The tall cop didn't smile. He didn't laugh. He just kept staring at her, his face super serious. The short cop with the sunglasses stepped up next to him, holding a piece of paper in his hand. "We've got a warrant for your arrest," the tall cop said, his voice clear and loud. "Tax fraud, money laundering, ring any bells?" He tilted his head a little, like he was waiting for her to say something smart. The short cop nodded, holding up the paper so Karen could see it. It had black writing on it, all official looking, with her name right at the top. Karen's eyes got even wider, if that was possible. "What?" she squeaked, her voice high and squeaky like a mouse. "A warrant? For me?" She shook her head fast, her messy hair bouncing around. No, this is a mistake. I didn't do anything." Her hands started waving again, flapping like bird wings, and her phone almost slipped out of her grip again. She caught it just in time, clutching it tight to her chest. Her flip-flop slapped the ground as she took a step back, slap like she wanted to run away but didn't know where to go. I stood there, still leaning against my car, and I couldn't help it, I grinned. Not a big, loud grin, just a little one, because this was too good. My music wasn't the problem that day, she was. Karen thought she was so smart, calling the cops on me because my stereo was loud. She thought they'd come running to yell at me and make me turn it off. But here's the big twist: they weren't here for me at all. They were here for her. And they'd been here the whole time, parked down the street, waiting for the perfect moment to catch her. Turns out, Karen had been up to some sneaky stuff. Really sneaky stuff. The cops said tax fraud and money laundering, which are fancy words for cheating with money and hiding it. She'd been running an illegal side hustle, something secret and bad, thinking no one would ever find out. I didn't know all the details yet, but I'd heard those whispers from the neighbors, remember? The late night cars, the guy in the suit, the yelling about money. It was all adding up now. Karen wasn't just a bossy lady who liked rules. She was a sneak, a trickster, pretending to be perfect while doing wrong things behind everyone's back. And here's the funniest part: she called the cops on me when they were already coming for her. How's that for a twist? She was standing there in my driveway, waving her phone around, telling the 911 lady I was the bad guy. But the whole time, those two police cars were parked just down the street, watching her. They didn't care about my music. They didn't care about my car. They were there for Karen, and she walked right into their trap without even knowing it. I almost laughed out loud, but I kept it in, just watching the show unfold. The tall cop took another step closer to Karen. "Ma'am, we need you to come with us," he said, his voice firm but not mean. The short cop pulled something shiny off his belt, handcuffs. They jingled a little clink, clink as he held them up. Karen's face went white, like all the red drained out of it. "No," she shouted, stepping back again. "This is wrong. I'm the one who called you. He's the problem." She pointed at me with her shaky hand, her finger wobbling in the air. "His music, it's too loud. Arrest him, not me." The tall cop didn't even glance my way. He just shook his head slow, like he'd heard it all before. "We're not here for him," he said. "We're here for you. Turn around, please." He reached out with one hand, motioning for her to put her arms behind her back. The short cop stepped closer too, the handcuffs ready. Karen's mouth opened and closed, like a fish out of water, but no words came out. She looked at me again, her eyes all big and wild, like she couldn't believe this was happening. I stayed quiet, still leaning on my car. The hood was cool under my arm now, and the sponge was soaking my hand, drip, drip. My music kept humming, soft and happy, like nothing was wrong. The sun was still shining, the birds were still chirping, and the driveway was still wet from my washing. But everything felt different now. Karen wasn't the boss anymore. She wasn't the queen of the neighborhood, yelling at everyone to follow her rules. She was just a lady in big trouble, caught by the cops she thought would help her. "Tax fraud," the short cop said, reading from his paper. Money laundering. We've been watching you for weeks. He looked up at Karen, his sunglasses hiding his eyes. Did you really think no one would notice? Karen shook her head again, her hair flopping around. No, 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 she said, her voice getting loud again. I didn't do that. I'm a good person. But the cops didn't listen. They'd heard enough. The tall cop grabbed her arm, not hard, just firm, and turned her around. The short cop snapped the handcuffs on her wrists, click, click, and just like that, she was caught. Karen twisted her head to look at me, her face all twisted up with mad and scared. This is your fault, she yelled, even though it didn't make sense. You and your stupid music. I just shrugged, lifting my shoulders a little, and wiped my soapy hand on my shorts. It wasn't my fault, not one bit. She'd been doing bad stuff all on her own, and now it was catching up to her. The cops didn't care about my stereo. They didn't care about her 911 call. They had a warrant, a big, official paper that said Karen was in trouble, and that was that. The tall cop started walking her toward the street, holding her arm gentle but strong. The short cop followed, tucking the paper back in his pocket. Karen's flip-flops dragged on the ground, scrape as she tried to pull away. Let me go, she shouted. This is a mistake. But they kept going, slow and steady, like they'd done this a million times. I watched them, my grin getting a little bigger. My music wasn't the problem that day, she was. And she'd called the cops right into her own mess. It was like a big, funny joke, and I had the best seat in the house. Let's rewind a second, think about how this all started. I was just washing my car, playing my tunes, having a good Saturday. Karen stormed over, mad as a hornet, thinking she could scare me with her rules and her phone. She thought she was so smart, dialing 911 to get me in trouble. But the whole time, those cops were already here, parked down the street, waiting for her. They'd been watching her for weeks, maybe months, because of her sneaky money stuff. Tax fraud means she didn't pay what she owed, and money laundering means she hid cash she wasn't supposed to have. She thought no one would notice, but someone did, and now she was busted. I stood there, my sponge still in my hand, and watched them walk her away. The sun made the handcuffs shine, sparkle as they moved. Karen kept yelling, her voice getting quieter as they got farther. You've got the wrong person, she said, but it sounded weak now, like she didn't believe it herself. The tall cop opened the back door of one police car, creak, and helped her inside. The short cop shut it, thump, and that was it. Karen was in the car, her face pressed to the window, staring out at me with big, angry eyes. My music kept playing, soft and steady, like a little victory song. The birds chirped, the sun shined, and my car sparkled from all my washing. Karen thought she had me beat, but she was so wrong. She'd been running her illegal side hustle, whatever that was, thinking she was too clever to get caught. But the cops knew. They'd been planning this, waiting for the right time, and they didn't need her 911 call to show up. They were already here, ready to nab her, and she handed them the perfect chance. How's that for a twist, friends? Karen thought she was the hero, saving the neighborhood from my loud music. But she was the bad guy all along, and I got to watch it all go down. My stereo wasn't the problem, she was. And calling the cops on me? That was the funniest mistake she could have made. They walked right past me, didn't even care about my tunes, and took her away instead. I couldn't have planned it better if I tried. So there you go, the big reveal. Karen's jaw dropped, the cops showed up, and her sneaky secrets came spilling out. It was wild, it was funny, and it was the best surprise ever. What do you think, friends? Did you see that coming? I sure didn't, not until those cops got close. Stick around, because there's more to tell, but this part? This was the moment everything flipped upside down, and I loved every second of it. Okay, friends, we're at the part where everything wraps up nice and neat. The big twist just happened. Karen got caught by the cops right in my driveway, and now it was time for justice to roll in. Let's dive back in and see how it all went down. Karen's face went white, like, super white, whiter than a piece of paper or a fluffy cloud. All that red from her yelling? Gone in a flash. The tall cop had just snapped the handcuffs on her wrists, click, click, and she looked like she couldn't believe it. Her big sunglasses were still slipping down her nose, and her eyes were wide and scared, like a deer caught in headlights. This is a mistake, she screeched, her voice high and loud, like a siren all its own. She twisted her head around, looking at the cops, then at me, then back at the cops, like she thought someone would say, "Oops, sorry, wrong person." But nope, they weren't buying it. Not one bit. The tall cop held her arm not hard, just firm, and started walking her toward the police car. The short cop with the sunglasses followed behind, making sure she didn't wiggle away. Karen's flip-flops dragged on the driveway, scrape, scrape, scrape as she tried to pull back. "No, no, no," she yelled. "You've got the wrong lady. I didn't do anything." Her voice was all shaky now, not bossy like before. She sounded desperate, like she was begging them to listen. But the cops? They just kept going, slow and steady, like they'd heard it all a million times. They didn't even blink at her screeching. I stood there by my car, still leaning against the wet hood. My sponge was soaking my hand, drip, 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 and the sun was shining bright, making my red car sparkle. Karen was getting hauled away, and I couldn't help it. I grinned a little. Not a mean grin, just a happy one, because this was wild. She'd been so sure she'd get me in trouble, but now she was the one in handcuffs. I reached over to my stereo, the one she'd been so mad about, and turned it up just a little. The music got louder, boom, 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 filling the air with a happy beat. Not super loud like before, just enough to enjoy. I figured, why not? The cops didn't care, and Karen wasn't the boss anymore. The police car was parked right at the edge of my driveway now. It was one of the two I'd seen down the street earlier, the black and white one with police in big letters on the side. The tall cop opened the back door creak and helped Karen inside. She didn't go easy, though. She kept squirming, her flip-flops kicking the air, thump, thump, as she tried to stop them. "Let me go," she shouted. "I'm not a bad guy." But the cop just shook his head and pushed her in, gentle but firm. The short cop shut the door, bang, and that was it. Karen was locked inside, her face smushed against the window, staring out at me with big, mad eyes. I waved at her, just a tiny wave, with my soapy hand, and went back to washing my car. The sponge squeaked as I rubbed the hood, squeak, squeak, getting the last bits of dirt off. The music played, the birds chirped, and the sun kept shining like nothing had happened. But something big had happened. Karen, the lady who'd spent years bossing everyone around, was now the one in trouble. And not just a little trouble, big, serious trouble. The cops had her, and she wasn't getting out of it easy. Neighbors started peeking out their windows. I could see them, little faces popping up behind curtains, eyes wide and curious. Mrs. Johnson, the lady with the yappy dog, was at her front door, her mouth open like she couldn't believe it. Timmy, my buddy who'd seen that weird car at Karen's house, was on his porch, pointing and whispering to his mom. Everyone was watching, quiet as mice, but I knew they were talking to each other. "Did you see that?" they'd say. "Karen's in handcuffs." The same woman who'd yelled at them about their grass or their dogs or their bikes was now the one getting taken away. It was like the whole neighborhood flipped upside down. The cops didn't rush. They were calm, like this was just another day for them. The tall cop walked around to the driver's side of the car, tap, 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 his shoes clicking on the pavement. The short cop got in the other side, and they started the engine, vroom. The car rolled forward slow, pulling out of my driveway and onto the street. Karen's face was still at the window, her nose pressed flat against the glass, her eyes glaring at me like it was all my fault. I just waved again, a little bigger this time, and turned back to my car. She could glare all she wanted, none of this was on me. As the police car drove off slow and steady down the street, I heard the neighbors start buzzing louder. Doors creaked open, and people stepped outside, whispering and pointing. "What happened?" I heard someone say. "Karen's gone," said someone else. I didn't stop to listen too close, I had a car to finish washing. I grabbed my hose and sprayed the hood, swoosh, watching the soap bubbles slide off in little rivers. The music kept playing, the bass thumping just enough to make me tap my foot, tap, tap, tap. My flip-flops were wet, my shorts were damp, and my t-shirt stuck to my back, but I didn't care. I was having a good day now, maybe even better than before. Later that day, after the cops were gone and my car was all clean, I found out more about what Karen had done. Timmy's mom came over to our house with some cookies, yum, and told me the whole story. She'd heard it from Mrs. Johnson, who'd heard it from someone else who knew a guy at the police station. It was big news. Turns out, Karen had been scamming people for months, like, a long time. She'd been tricking folks out of their money, hiding cash she wasn't supposed to have, and dodging taxes. Taxes are the money you're supposed to give the government when you earn stuff, and Karen wasn't paying hers. She thought she could keep it all secret, stashing it away like a sneaky squirrel with nuts. Timmy's mom said Karen had been running the scam with some shady people, guys who'd come to her house late at night. That's what those weird cars were about. She'd been making deals, taking money she didn't earn, and pretending everything was fine. She'd bossed us around, telling us to cut our grass or quiet our dogs while she was the one breaking rules. Big rules. The cops had been watching her for weeks, waiting to catch her. They had proof papers and phone calls and all kinds of stuff that showed she was a cheat. And that warrant? That was their ticket to grab her, right when she least expected it. I sat on my porch with a cookie in my hand, listening to Timmy's mom. My car was parked in the driveway, all shiny and red, sparkling in the sun. The stereo was still on, playing soft now, just a little hum to keep me company. I couldn't believe it. Karen, the queen of the neighborhood, was a scammer. She'd spent years acting like she was better than everyone, glaring at us from her perfect lawn, but it was all fake. She wasn't perfect. She was in trouble, big, messy trouble, and now everyone knew it. Me. I just finished washing my car and enjoyed the rest of my day. After the cops took Karen away, I sprayed the whole car down, swoosh, swoosh, making sure every spot was clean. Then I grabbed a towel and wiped it dry, watching it shine like a big cherry under the sun. The music played, the birds sang, and the neighbors kept whispering, but I didn't mind. I sat on my porch with my cookies, kicking my wet flip-flops off, and smiled. My day started with music and soap, and it ended with justice. Karen was gone, off to face what she'd done, and I was free to chill. Karma sure has a funny way of showing up, doesn't it? That's what Timmy's mom said, and I agreed. Karma's like a boomerang, it comes back around when you least expect it. Karen thought she could boss me around, call the cops on my music, and win the day. But her own sneaky tricks boomeranged right back at her. She'd been scamming and hiding, thinking she'd never get caught, but the cops were smarter. They waited, they watched, and they nabbed her right when she thought she was safe. And me? I didn't have to do a thing, just wash my car and watch it happen. The neighborhood felt different after that. Quieter, but in a good way. No more Karen stomping over to yell about rules. No more mean glares from across the street. People started talking more, waving hi, smiling like they were relieved. Mrs. Johnson's dog barked, Timmy rode his bike, and I played my music soft, but still thumping, and nobody minded. Karen's perfect lawn didn't matter anymore. Her big house sat empty, her flowers drooping a little, and her mailbox shaped like a birdhouse just stood there, lonely. She was gone, off to deal with the cops and the courts, and we were all free from her bossing. I finished my cookie and leaned back on the porch, looking at my car. It was the cleanest it'd ever been, all red and shiny, like a prize I'd earned. The sun was starting to set now, turning the sky orange and pink, and the air felt cool. My stereo played one last song, Dum, 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 and I turned it off, letting the quiet settle in. My day had been wild, music, Karen, cops, and all, but it ended just right. I didn't get in trouble. I didn't have to fight. I just watched justice show up, big and bold, and take care of everything. So that's how it ended, friends. Karen's face went white, the cops took her away, and the neighborhood got a big dose of fairness. She'd been scamming for months, hiding cash and dodging taxes, but she couldn't hide forever. Me. I got to enjoy my music and my clean car, while karma did its funny dance. It was a day I'd never forget, one where the bossy lady lost, and the rest of us won. What a ride, right? Justice served, just like that, and I didn't even have to lift a finger. Hey there, friends. We've made it to the end of this wild story, and wow, what a ride it was. Let's sit back and think about it all for a minute, because there's some cool stuff to learn from what happened. So there you have it, a day that started with a cranky neighbor ended with justice rolling in like a big, loud thunderclap. You know how thunder booms after a storm? That's what it felt like when the cops took Karen away, big, surprising, and kinda awesome. I'm Jake, just a regular guy who likes music and clean cars, and I didn't expect my Saturday to turn into this. But it did, and now I've got some thoughts to share with you. Picture this: the sun was shining, my car was sparkling, and my music was thumping, everything was perfect. Then Karen came stomping over, all mad and loud, ready to ruin my day. She was the loudest complainer on the block, always yelling about rules and grass and noise. She thought she could boss me around, call the cops, and make me feel small. But here's the big lesson: it just goes to show, sometimes the loudest complainers are hiding the biggest secrets. Karen wasn't just cranky, she was sneaky. She'd been scamming people, hiding money, and breaking rules way worse than my loud stereo. She acted like she was perfect, but she was the one in trouble all along. I was just chilling, washing my car, when she tried to mess with my vibe. You know that feeling when someone's being mean or bossy, and it makes your tummy feel all twisty? That's what Karen wanted me to feel. She pointed her finger, yelled about my music, and called 911 like it was a big emergency. I could have gotten mad or scared, but I didn't. I just smiled and waited. And guess what? That's my advice for you: next time someone tries to ruin your vibe, just smile and wait. Don't yell back, don't cry, don't let them win. Because the truth always finds a way out, like a little bird flying free from a cage. It might take a minute, but it'll show up, just like it did for Karen. Think about it: Karen thought she was so smart. She thought calling the cops would make her the hero and me the bad guy. But those cops were already there, watching her, waiting for her. They knew about her secrets, her scams, her hidden cash, her sneaky deals. She didn't see it coming, but I did, and I stayed calm. That's the trick: staying cool even when someone's being loud and mean. You don't have to fight or fuss. Just keep doing your thing, like I kept washing my car, and let the truth do the work. It's like magic, but real. Let's imagine you've got a Karen in your life. Maybe it's a kid at school who's always telling you what to do, or a grown-up who's grumpy all the time. They might act big and tough, pointing fingers and making noise, but what if they're hiding something? What if they're not as perfect as they pretend? Karen fooled us all for a while. Her lawn was neat, her house was fancy, and she bossed everyone around like she owned the street. But under all that, she was cheating and sneaking. So when someone's mean to you, don't let it shake you up. Smile, wait, and watch, because the truth loves to pop out when you least expect it. I didn't know Karen's secrets at first. I just thought she was annoying, always glaring at me from across the street. But then the neighbors whispered late night cars, a guy in a suit, yelling about money, and it started to make sense. She wasn't just loud, she was hiding stuff. And when the cops showed up, it all came crashing down. That's what I mean by justice rolling in like a thunderclap boom. It was fast, it was loud, and it changed everything. She went from bossing me around to sitting in a police car, her face all white and scared. It was fair, it was right, and it felt good to see. So here's a little picture for you: imagine you're playing outside, maybe kicking a ball or riding your bike, and someone comes along to yell at you. They say you're too loud or too messy, and they try to stop your fun. What do? You could yell back, or you could run away, but how about this: just smile and keep going. Let them huff and puff while you stay happy. That's what I did with Karen. I kept washing my car, kept my music on low, and let her yell. And then bam, the cops came for her, not me. The truth snuck up and surprised her, and I didn't have to do a thing. That's the cool part about this story: it's not just about Karen getting caught. It's about how you can handle tough stuff too. You don't need to be loud or mean to win. You don't need to fight every battle. Sometimes, the best thing is to wait and let things sort themselves out. Karen thought she had power over me, but she didn't. Her own secrets tripped her up, and justice took care of the rest. It's like the world has a way of fixing itself, making sure the sneaky ones don't get away forever. And you just get to keep being you, having fun and staying awesome. Let's think about my day for a sec. It started so simple: sunshine, soap, and songs. I was happy, just me and my car, until Karen tried to mess it up. But by the end, I was still happy: car clean, music playing, cookies on my porch. Karen. She was off with the cops, facing her mess. That's what happens when you try to ruin someone's vibe: the truth comes back to bite you. I didn't have to yell or cry or beg. I just waited, and it worked out. So next time you're in a spot like that, remember me and my car. Smile, wait, and let the thunderclap come. It's way more fun that way. What did you think of the story, friends? Wasn't it wild how Karen went from cranky to caught? I bet you didn't see that twist coming. I sure didn't. Drop your thoughts below, because I want to hear what you liked best. Did you laugh when her jaw dropped? Did you cheer when the cops showed up? Tell me all about it. And hey, do you have a Karen in your life too? Maybe someone who's always bossing you around or complaining. Let me know if you've got a story like mine. I'd love to read it. We can swap tales and laugh together. This whole thing taught me something big. Don't let the loud complainers get you down. They might seem tough, but they're not always right. Karen was loud, but she was wrong, and the truth found her anyway. You don't have to be scared of people like that. Just keep being you. Play your music, kick your ball, ride your bike, and let the world figure it out. The truth's like a superhero. It swoops in when you need it, even if it takes a little while. And when it does, boom. Thunderclap. Justice. It's the best feeling ever. So here's my last little bit for you. Stay awesome, okay? Don't let anyone ruin your vibe, because you're too cool for that. Smile through the tough stuff, wait for the truth, and watch it roll in like a big, happy storm. I had a blast telling you the story, and I can't wait to share more with you. See you in the next one, friends. Keep being amazing, keep having fun, and never let a Karen stop you. What's next? Who knows? But it's gonna be great, just like you. Bye for now. Stay awesome.